Vanderbilt, please, for 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, and I really want to thank our witnesses. I think there's a lot of information here that we can put into our recommendations, largely because of your direct connections with human rights defenders and women human rights activists. And I was very interested, Ms. Nivea Bandi, when you talked about these sophisticated transnational anti-feminist narratives. And also, I do believe, Ms. Ravon, you mentioned that the backlash against women's rights is interconnected. And we know that this is something that is happening globally, and that means Canada's not immune. So human rights defenders, and I'd like to direct this question first to Ms. Nivea Bandi, human rights defenders, once they get here, you spoke in your remarks about some of the needs that they have, but I wonder, in your opening remarks, you touched on the need for protection. And the threats that they continue to face once they're here. And I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit about that. And then I'll ask Ms. Ravon to comment as well.
Yes, so very quickly, I think there's work to be done to study further the rise of anti-rights, anti-gender, and anti-feminist narratives. They are indeed transnational, and they are interconnected. Just yesterday, I just came back from Halifax with a roundtable with other scholars where they're actually studying exactly what these trends look like, and they are moving from country to country. It's more networks that are rising. It's a mix of both, a denial of the human rights framework and an emphasis on individual rights that we're seeing rising across, primarily in Europe, but also in North America and in various other countries as well. When it comes to one of the most effective way for them to spread is through digital platforms and social media in particular. And this is why the movement is becoming transnational. And one of the major threats for defenders who are here in Canada comes through these platforms. So the levels of online violence that these human rights defenders in Canada are facing, as I said, is alarming. They receive threats. But beyond the online piece, they also receive physical threats. Some of them have reported, particularly those from China, have reported receiving calls being followed, being overt surveillance from their governments and from actors that are close to their governments and who have presence here on Canadian soil. So I would really want to highlight the need to better support women from online violence. We've just seen that the Governor General herself, he receives these levels of violence. Women journalists, in particular, are at risk here in Canada, and so are a variety of other women human rights defenders. So there's an emboldening of the anti-gender, anti-feminist, and anti-rights movement. It is spreading. It's organized. It's sophisticated. It is resourced, and so it needs an adequate response from the Canadian government. And I'm quite concerned about where we're going to be in 5 years if we don't take concrete action today. So I'll just stop here now and give Lauren an opportunity to respond as well.
Within 30 seconds.
Thanks, Ketty. I totally agree. And I think we need to be aware that attacks against the most marginalized communities and human rights defenders is usually a canary in the coal mine that's indicating a broader crackdown on democratic space, on civic space. So right now, for example, huge attacks on trans communities and LGBTQ organizing and the organizing of trans women in particular. The attacks that we see on them is a sign of what's to come in terms of broader attacks on women's rights, on human rights, on civic space. And so seeing these as kind of isolated incidents is dangerous, not only for their rights, but also for the health of our democracies. And I just want to say this week alone, around International Women's Day, we've seen huge attacks, tens of thousands of people attacking one of our Oxfam Canada board members, an incredible trans woman activist. And this is a sign that is incredibly concerning because it's also happening here in Canada.